Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for On SI every single day since August 2019, and we are continuing to march forward through the end of the season together. As always, you can find our 100% free, 24/7 boots on the ground content covering the Jacksonville Jaguars when you follow us on social media such as Facebook and Twitter at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. Alright folks, welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. Of course, we are talking Jaguars versus the Los Angeles Chargers, Week 11. It very much feels like a must-win game for the Jaguars sitting at 5-4. They started off 4-1, but have dropped 3 of their last 4 games. As 3 of those have came against teams that look, like at the very least playoff contenders, if not 2 teams that seem like the leading NFC contenders right now. Obviously, the Texans have some ground to make up. They're not far behind the Jaguars, who are number 7 in the AFC right now. So there's no really mistaking how much I think this game means from the Jaguars' perspective. This is a game that, because of that collapse in Houston, the margin for error in the AFC is just gone. Like the Jaguars, they need to build some kind of cushion between them and the Chiefs, and they just never did. The Chargers are obviously ahead of them in terms of wild card. The Buffalo Bills are pulling ahead of them, even with their loss to Miami last week. And then, had the Jaguars won, you're taking advantage of games like the Bills have against the Dolphins, where they don't get done what everything on paper suggested should have got done. Those are the weeks that you have to win at least your games to take advantage for when those things happen. Because some teams are going to win games that they shouldn't, and some teams are going to lose games that they shouldn't. So I think at the end of the day, the Jaguars, the stakes are very clear in this game. Aaron Schatz, who does a great job at DVOA, put out that he said on Twitter, Sunday's game between the Chargers and the Jaguars is the most important game so far this season for playoff odds, with 71% combined leverage. He said for the Jaguars, they have a 57% playoff odd to make the playoffs with a win, but if they lose, their playoff chances drop all the way to 19%. As for the Chargers, if they win, they have a 91% chance to make the playoffs and a 58% chance if they lose. So it's telling, one, that even in the best case scenario for the Jaguars, they win and the Chargers lose, the Chargers still have a better chance of making the playoffs. And that shows you where the Jaguars are in the AFC right now. The AFC South race, I don't know if you want to call it luckily for them. They still have the Colts twice on their schedule. It's 2 games, obviously, that they could use to catch up on ground with the Colts, but that's 2 games that the Colts are very likely going to be heavily favored in. Even at home, where the Jaguars have had that long streak. I mean, the Colts are just clearly the class of the AFC this season. So I think that when you look at it from the Jaguars' perspective, you lose this game, I think that it's going to get very hard to make the playoffs. It really feels like 10 wins is the absolute minimum for the wild card. And obviously, they have some games against some not great opponents coming up. 2 games against the Titans, a game against the Jets, a game against the Cardinals. But the way the Jaguars have played, really since week 5, week 6, there's no reason to think the Jaguars should be overwhelming favorites in any of those games. I mean, the 2-win Raiders, were a batted pass away from beating them in Las Vegas just a few weeks ago. So overall, looking at this matchup between the Jaguars and the Chargers, the Jaguars' defense right now is just the state that it's in, I believe, due to a mix of, obviously, the talent, not having enough difference makers up front, and injuries where you're down Travis Hunter, you're down Jordan Lewis, you're down Eric Murray. technically, if you want to go back to what their secondary looked like at the start of the season, you're down Tyson Campbell. Greg Newsome, Monteric Brown, and Jarian Jones as, the starting trio is not at all what that trio was, during the early part of the season. And then Eric Murray loss has been a major impact. And he's the best safety on the team, obviously. He was making a lot of plays for them. And Antonio Johnson and Andrew Wingard have been picked on to some extent at different points throughout this little tough stretch. Wingard's were more so earlier in the losing streak, against the Seahawks and that play against the Rams. But of course, if you want to be fair, maybe wasn't put in the best positions by the defense coordinator. With the way that the Jaguars defense has struggled recently, they struggled against Geno Smith, who's been terrible this season. Struggled against Davis Mills, who's one of the least efficient and lowest ranked quarterback in most metrics out of all quarterbacks with his much experience since he started games way back when. Why would it be any different against a Chargers team that has an incredibly talented and explosive and efficient quarterback in Justin Herbert, who is not even in the same universe of talent as Geno Smith and Davis Mills? Herbert, for my money, is the second best quarterback on the Jaguars' schedule this season. I think it goes Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Matthew Stafford, and then Sam Darnold. Those, I think, are the best quarterbacks on the Jaguars' schedule this year. They don't exactly play a murderer's row. But the guys they have played against, Davis Mills, Jake Browning to an extent, it seems like everybody sans C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young have found some kind of success against the Jaguars defense. So I think Herbert is a bad matchup for the Jaguars. They have, four legit guys in the passing game that they like to get involved. And against a secondary that's down all those guys I listed, it just feels like odds are really in LA's favor when they have the ball. I know they've had some offensive line injuries, but I also think that this, Jaguars defense just has struggled so much at generating a rush and penetration and big plays with a four-man rush that it's hard to really think it will matter all that much. As for the Jaguars against the Chargers defense, both due to a combination of the strength of these units and the overall health of the Jaguars, you're not going to have Brendan Strange. You're not going to have Travis Hunter. Brian Thomas, we'll see. So, reasonably, there's a scenario out there where, they go out in 11 personnel and their three receivers are and tight end are Parker Washington, Jacoby Myers, Tim Patrick, and Johnny Munt. Against a Chargers team that is one of the best defenses in the NFL against the pass, that just feels like, it really points towards the Chargers having a big advantage here. Chargers do a good job of getting pressure and getting home with just sending four, so you can probably expect them to drop back 7 guys in coverage a good bit. And it seems like that is something that the Jaguars have struggled with. They've hit some big plays against blitzes at times this year, but just going out there and diagnosing and picking apart coverage doesn't feel like it's a strength of this offense. So they can be ran on. They're really a middling rush defense. So if, I'm the Jaguars, I'm trying to get Travis Etienne the ball 20-plus times in the ground game in this game and really kind of lean on him. But ultimately, my prediction for this game, I don't think this is in the Jaguars' cards. I think these are two teams heading on two opposite trajectories right now. The Jaguars are getting worse. The Chargers are getting better. Two quarterbacks playing very differently right now. Herbert, like Lawrence, has had to, deal without a lot of his key pieces, his starting offensive tackles, etc., but he has still really produced week in and week out. I got the Chargers winning this one 30-13. I think the Jaguars will be in for a tough Sunday in Everbank Stadium. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode. My name is John Shipley. I'll be back next time.